D'ailleurs, vous avez vu que cette question des diasporas, des Afro-Descendants a traversé et en transverse de tous les panels qu'on a retrouvés constamment. Et c'est vrai que, par exemple, je parlais tout à l'heure du discours de Guterres, donc le secrétaire général des Nations Unies, à l'occasion de la Journée internationale des personnes afro, donc de l'Assemblée africaine. Donc, cette montée de racisme. Je parlais aussi, donc, il faut aussi rappeler, hein, Monsieur le Massier, la décennie donc, qui est consacrée aux personnes afro-descendantes. C'est une décennie qu'on oublie de rappeler, qui est passée donc, du 1er janvier 2015 au 31 décembre 2024. Donc nous sommes en plein. C'est donc une décennie qui est consacrée. Et donc, voilà, le thème donc, de cette décennie, c'était donc personnes afro-descendantes, donc considérables et développement. C'était ça le thème qui est consacré à cette décennie. C'est toujours bon à savoir. Et alors, tout à l'heure, on a donné l'histoire de la Floride qui donc interdit l'enseignement de l'histoire de l'Afrique. Il y a quand même un contrario d'autres exemples qui sont très intéressants, notamment celui du Canada. Donc ça fait 2 jours. Le gouvernement de Justin Trudeau a consacré la somme de 2 milliards de dollars pour une réparation qui avait été empêchée d'étudier dans leur langue d'origine. Donc il y avait toute une génération qui avait été empêchée de parler et d'étudier dans leur langue d'origine. Donc pour réparation, donc le gouvernement Trudeau a donné 2 milliards de dollars. Et je pense qu'il y a cette idée aussi de réparation qui est en train de faire son chemin. Et peut-être que ce serait intéressant de suivre cette direction-là. Alors, donc, la contribution de la diaspora des Africaines au rayonnement international de la culture africaine, un constat, c'est que cette diaspora a déjà contribué, pour les pays où elle est installée, elle a contribué à construire des économies. Elle a contribué très fortement, justement, à être l'épine dorsale de ces économies. Alors moi, je voudrais avoir, donc, Madame Kaaout, Maíra, vous êtes historienne brésilienne, c'est vraiment super sympa, donc, d'abord parce qu'on a beaucoup parlé des jeunes, des enfants. Bon, là, c'est vraiment les jeunes, les plus jeunes. On va vous écouter, vous venez du Brésil. Vous parlez français, vous êtes... Non? Mais vous le comprenez? Ok, merci beaucoup. Caroline, nous vous écoute.
Bonjour, je suis Caroline, je suis brésilienne. Excusez-moi, je n'ai pas les vacances brésiliennes. Because for the Brazilians, it's also difficult, you know, we never can communicate in Portuguese. It's straight. So for today, I will choose English. So I'm so sorry. Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here. It was a pleasure to be invited to this conference. And when I was sitting down this morning, just listening to all the panelists and everybody that was talking, I was just thinking that next year for the same college for January, I hope more Brazilians can come over and collaborate and hear and learn together with African brothers who are here. So today I'm talking about the Yoruba culture in Brazil and how we need to go beyond the isolation that we are right now. I will start with this figure that is Exu Elebara. Exu Elebara is a date in the African, in the Yoruba culture that means and represents the elements and the philosophy of movement. And that's what I intend to do today. The key question that I would like to highlight this afternoon is a question that one student of mine in Brazil did to me back in 2018. I was preparing the arrival for the King, His Imperial Majesty Oani of Ife in Brazil for his first time, and I was displaying a documentary. And one teenager just stood up and he said, "But teacher, is there a black king alive in the world? His family was never enslaved?" Is he well in Africa? And with that questions that the student of 14 years old was making to me inside a slum in Petrópolis, in a city in Rio de Janeiro, I just started to think about the dimension of the damage that the education blocked by the West society have caused in Brazil. There is a very deep gap of knowledge for the Afro-Descendants in Brazil before they were enslaved. But at the same time, that people, they keep the traditions from the Yoruba land that was passed across through the orality and never was broken down. The Yoruba culture in Brazil is very well preserved inside the Afro religions. My point here is to teach African history in Brazil is compulsory by the law. Because of the work and the pressure from the Black movement in Brazil, our president back in 2003 and our president today, Lula, he signed a law number 10,639, making compulsory to teach Afro-Brazilian and African history and culture inside the schools. The law is completing this year 20 years. And, by the way, we still have a long way to go. Not that nobody needed to do a law to teach Greek history or Roman history or Portuguese history in Brazil. Only the African history. Without the law, most parts of the schools will not even touch such kind of subject. To me, as a historian and also as a teacher, education is strong. And the history and the connection, especially the connection with the Yoruba culture, is all over. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. We have in downtown, in Rio downtown, a place that is called Little Africa. This place was developed by the African community that was formed during the slave time and after the slave time. Middle of the seats, in one of the main avenues, we have a huge statue that you can see on the screen. This statue we call Zumbi of Palmares. The statue was placed over 35 years ago, and it is to celebrate a warrior who fought against the Portuguese for freedom during the 17th century in Brazil. Zumbi was a leader of the biggest community of runaway slavers, the community that is called Palmares, the northwest of Brazil. That's why we call the statue. So, if you are in Rio and you ask a carioca, a person who was born there, and you ask, who is that statue over there? They will tell you, that's the head of Zumbi of Palmares. What is very great, because it's the truth. But the interesting point here is that that same head placed in a place called Little Africa isn't only the head of Zumbi. Any Yoruba person coming from Africa that steps in Rio and pass in front of the statue, you look to that and will recognize the king of the Yoruba land. The king, that head, and the person will tell you that's the head of Ife. It is called Oriolokun. It represents Odudua. That was the first king of the Yoruba land, title of Oni of Ife. So, the question that Yoruba person will ask me is, Carolina, what is the Oni of Ife head doing in downtown, in Rio de Janeiro city? And here is the point that leads us through the African history. The person who made that choice to honor Zumbi of Palmares, he have choose a Yoruba head to give to Zumbi the face of a king from Africa. But unfortunately, most part of the Brazilians don't even know that that head is the king of Africa, in Africa. They can't identify the Yoruba king, but the Yoruba aesthetic is there. The Yoruba philosophy about Ori, that's how we call heads in Yoruba, is there, and the Yoruba language is also there. The Yoruba culture is alive and very being celebrated in Brazil for several years, but sometimes disconnected from the motherhood lands. And even the original Oriolocum, because this has, it's like ampliation and a call from the original that was pulled from the Germans, from the Ileife Kingdom in the end of 19. This is the original one that is placed today in Britain's Museum. So, if you want to see the original Oriolocum, it cannot be found in Nigeria currently. You must travel to London and visit the British Museum to see that the Yoruba art. And that leads us to another conversation, equally important, about the African art in European Museum. So what I'm saying here is African culture is being celebrated and protected in Brazil. We Afro-Brazilians and we Africans